My sister smiled the entire time the lawyer read our father's will. We were sitting in a conference room 2 hours after the funeral, still in our black dresses, the smell of the church's lilies somehow still clinging to both of us, and my sister Vanessa could not stop smiling as the attorney listed everything she had just inherited. The house, the savings account, full ownership of our father's hardware store. I received an envelope, sealed, my name written on the front in my father's handwriting, with a single instruction typed beneath it, to be opened privately. Vanessa actually laughed when she saw it. Not cruelly exactly, the kind of laugh that comes from someone who has already decided what your entire inheritance means before they've seen the contents. An envelope, she said, looking at our cousins seated around the table. I get the house and the business, and she gets an envelope. I didn't open it. Not there. I held it in my lap and let her have her moment, because I had learned a long time ago that some things are not worth fighting for in front of an audience. The attorney, a careful man named Mr. Bartlett who had handled our father's affairs for almost 20 years, finished reading the formal distribution. He set down the papers. He looked at Vanessa over his glasses. Before we close this meeting, he said, I need to confirm something with you directly, Vanessa, regarding the property. Of course, she said, still smiling. You're aware of the home equity loan your father took out 8 years ago. The one secured against the house. Her smile did not move. Not yet. I'm not aware of any loan, she said. Mr. Bartlett nodded slowly, the way people nod when they're about to deliver information they already know is going to land somewhere difficult. That's what I suspected, he said. Which is precisely why your father wanted this handled the way he arranged it. And that was the exact moment I watched my sister's smile finally completely disappear. My name is Claire Ashford. This is the story of what was actually inside that envelope, and why our father trusted me with something he never trusted Vanessa to handle at all. Subscribe right now because this is exactly the kind of story this channel exists to tell. New story every single day. Our father, Walter Ashford, ran Ashford Hardware for 34 years. A small but steady business in the same strip of stores it had occupied since before either Vanessa or I were born. He was not a wealthy man by any conventional measure, but he was careful, the specific kind of careful that comes from someone who watched his own father lose a business once and never wanted to repeat that particular failure. Vanessa was always unmistakably his favorite. I want to say this plainly, because there's no honest version of this story that pretends otherwise. She was older by 4 years, louder, more naturally confident in every room she entered, and our father's face changed in a specific way whenever she walked into it. A brightness that I noticed even as a child didn't quite extend the same way to me. I don't think he loved me less. I think he understood me differently, quieter, more practical, the kind of daughter who asked careful questions instead of demanding attention. He used to say when I was young that Vanessa was his sunshine and I was his ledger, meaning it as a compliment, though it took me years to actually receive it that way. When our mother passed away 11 years ago, the family dynamic shifted in ways that became impossible to ignore. Vanessa moved further away, emotionally if not physically, pursuing her own life with the kind of confidence that didn't leave much room for the slower, more careful work of actually checking on our father as he aged alone in that house. I was the one who started driving over on Sundays. I was the one who eventually noticed around 8 years ago, when the hardware store's finances started looking strained in ways that worried me enough to ask direct questions. I learned about the home equity loan almost by accident, the way these things often surface, glancing at mail on his kitchen counter during one of my Sunday visits, a statement from the bank that he hadn't yet filed away. When I asked him about it directly, he was quiet for a long moment before explaining. The hardware store had needed a cash infusion to survive a difficult stretch after a competitor opened 2 miles away, undercutting prices in a way that nearly put him out of business entirely. He had taken out a loan against the house itself, the only significant asset he had, to keep the store's doors open during those 18 difficult months. I didn't want to worry either of you, he told me. Vanessa especially. She's never been good with this kind of pressure. You, I think, could handle knowing. I want to be honest about how that sentence landed because it's complicated. Part of me felt the old familiar sting of being, once again, the practical one rather than the cherished one. But part of me also understood with growing clarity over the following years that my father was making a specific deliberate choice about who he trusted with difficult information, and that choice was not actually about who he loved more. Over the following years, I helped him manage that loan quietly. I reviewed statements with him on Sunday visits. I helped him refinance once when interest rates shifted favorably. I never told Vanessa because my father asked me directly not to, and because frankly the conversations Vanessa and I had about our father's finances tended to end with her assuring everyone things were fine without actually engaging with the specifics. The loan was never fully paid off. By the time our father passed away, 6 months ago after a brief illness, there remained a balance of just under $60,000 still secured against the house Vanessa had just been handed, with full confidence in that conference room. I want to tell you about the funeral itself, because the contrast between that morning and the conference room afterward matters to understanding everything that followed. The service was small, the way our father would have wanted it, filled mostly with longtime customers from the hardware store and a handful of relatives. Vanessa gave the eulogy, and I want to be fair in saying it was genuinely moving. She spoke about our father's steadiness, his particular brand of quiet humor, the way he remembered every regular customer's name and their specific home improvement projects across decades. I sat in the front row beside her, and cried through most of it, the real uncomplicated grief of losing a parent who, whatever the complications of our specific relationship, had genuinely loved me in his own careful way. I had not yet told Vanessa about the loan. I want to explain why, because I think it matters considerably to understanding what happened next. Our father had specifically instructed in the months before his death that the loan information be handled through his attorney in writing, rather than through a difficult family conversation that he worried Vanessa would receive as an attack rather than simply information she needed. "She'll think you're trying to take something from her," he told me, during one of our final conversations weeks before he passed. "If it comes from Bartlett in writing as part of the formal process, it's just a fact she has to deal with. If it comes from you directly, she'll make it about you somehow, and I don't want your relationship to carry that weight." I understood, even as he said it, that this reflected something true about how our family actually operated, a truth I had absorbed slowly over many years without ever fully naming it. Vanessa had a particular gift for converting any uncomfortable information into a referendum on the messenger's motives, rather than simply absorbing the information itself. We arrived at Mr. Bartlett's office 2 hours after the service, still in our funeral clothes, the specific exhaustion of a difficult morning sitting heavily over both of us. Mr. Bartlett had been our father's attorney for almost 2 decades, a careful, methodical man who had handled small business filings, the original mortgage on the house, and now, finally, the distribution of everything our father had spent a lifetime building. He began with the formal reading, the language of wills carrying its own particular cadence, dense with phrases like "I give, devise, and bequeath" that somehow made even simple gifts sound formal and weighted. The house in its entirety to Vanessa Ashford. The savings account, totaling approximately $90,000, to Vanessa Ashford. Full ownership of Ashford Hardware, including all business assets and the building itself, to Vanessa Ashford. To my daughter Claire Ashford, I leave the enclosed sealed envelope, along with my complete trust that she will know precisely what to do with its contents. I watched Vanessa's face brighten with each item Mr. Bartlett listed. By the time he reached the part about my envelope, she could barely contain herself. "An envelope," she repeated, looking around the table at our assembled cousins. "I get the house and the business and the savings, and she gets an envelope." I held the sealed envelope in my lap. I did not open it. I had a feeling even then, sitting in that conference room, that whatever was inside deserved a quieter moment than the one currently unfolding. Mr. Bartlett finished the formal reading and set down his papers, the particular gesture of someone signaling that the document itself had concluded, though clearly something additional remained. "Before we close this meeting," he said, looking directly at Vanessa, "I need to confirm something with you regarding the property you've just inherited." "Of course," Vanessa said, still smiling, still riding the warm confidence of having just received, in her understanding, the entirety of our father's estate. "Are you aware," Mr. Bartlett continued, "of the home equity loan your father took out approximately 8 years ago, secured against the house?" I watched my sister's face carefully in that moment, the specific transition from confident ease to a flicker of confusion that hadn't yet calcified into anything more serious. "I'm not aware of any loan," she said. "What loan?" "A loan of approximately $90,000 originally, taken to support the hardware store during a difficult financial period, Mr. Bartlett said. There remains a balance of just under $60,000 currently secured against the property you've just inherited. The room went quiet in the specific way rooms go quiet when information lands that nobody present, except a select few, had been prepared for. That's not possible, Vanessa said, her voice carrying the first edge of something less confident than before. Dad never mentioned any loan. The house was always just ours, free and clear. It was not free and clear, Mr. Bartlett said, with the particular gentle precision of someone delivering unwelcome facts as carefully as facts can be delivered. Your father took out this loan specifically to keep the hardware store operational during a period when a competing business nearly forced him to close. He was very deliberate about how this information would be communicated to you, which is in part why we're discussing it now in this formal setting, rather than leaving it for you to discover independently. How would you even know about this? Vanessa asked, turning toward me with a sharpness I hadn't seen from her in years. Did you know about this? I want to be honest about the moment that followed because I had a choice about how to answer and the choice mattered. Yes, I said. I've known for about 8 years. 8 years, Vanessa repeated, and I watched something shift in her expression, the confidence draining away in real time, replaced by something more complicated, part hurt and part genuine alarm at the financial reality she was only now beginning to understand. You knew about a $60,000 debt attached to this house for 8 years, and you never told me? Dad asked me not to, I said. He was specific about it. He didn't want it handled as a conversation between us. He wanted it handled through Mr. Bartlett formally, as part of the estate process. Why would he do that? Vanessa asked, and I could hear, underneath the question, the beginning of a more painful recognition, the same recognition I had been carrying privately for years. I let Mr. Bartlett answer this one, because I think the answer carried more weight coming from him, as the neutral party who had actually discussed this directly with our father. Your father was very clear with me about his reasoning, Mr. Bartlett said. He believed that if Claire delivered this information directly, you would interpret it as an attempt by her to diminish what you'd received, rather than simply receiving the information as fact. He wanted the formal estate process to carry that weight instead, specifically to protect your relationship with your sister from becoming entangled with difficult financial news. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment, looking at the table rather than at either of us. He thought I'd blame her, she said eventually, her voice smaller than I had heard it in years. He thought I couldn't just receive information without making it about something else. Neither Mr. Bartlett nor I said anything. I think we both understood that this was a question Vanessa needed to sit with herself, rather than have either of us confirm or deny. I want to tell you about what was actually inside the sealed envelope, because I think it matters considerably to understanding the full shape of what our father had arranged. I opened it that evening, alone in my apartment, several hours after the conference room had emptied and Vanessa had left, still processing the loan information, in a state I genuinely felt sympathy for despite everything. Inside was a letter, handwritten in my father's careful script, along with a separate document from Mr. Bartlett's office. The letter explained what I had already begun to suspect. Our father had structured a portion of his life insurance policy, separate from the estate Vanessa had inherited, specifically designated to me, in an amount calculated to approximately cover the remaining balance on the home equity loan. His letter explained his reasoning directly. He had not done this to give me more than Vanessa, not in his own accounting of it. He had done it because he understood, clearly and without illusion, that the house, the business, and the savings account would mean very little to Vanessa if they arrived attached to a debt she didn't understand and wasn't prepared to manage. I'm leaving you the means to fix what she can't yet see needs fixing, he wrote. Not because you deserve more. Because you're the only one who'll actually use it the right way, quietly, without making her feel smaller for needing the help. The insurance proceeds, once processed, would allow me to pay off the remaining loan balance directly, removing the debt from the house entirely, restoring to Vanessa exactly what she believed she had inherited that afternoon, a home free and clear of any encumbrance. My father had given me an envelope at the funeral. What he had actually given me was the quiet means to make his other daughter's inheritance whole, without ever requiring her to know the specific mechanics of how that wholeness had been restored. I called Vanessa 3 days later. I want to walk through this conversation carefully, because it represents, I think, the actual resolution of everything our father had been trying to engineer from beyond the careful structure of his will. I want to tell you what was in the envelope, I said, once we'd settled into the particular awkward quiet that had existed between us since the conference room. Okay, she said, her voice still carrying some of the bruised quality from 3 days earlier. I explained the insurance policy, the specific amount calculated against the loan balance, the letter our father had written explaining his reasoning. I'm going to use it to pay off the loan, I told her. The house will be free and clear, the way you thought it already was. I'm not telling you this so you owe me anything. I'm telling you because I think you deserve to actually understand what happened, rather than just feeling like Dad trusted me more than you. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Why would he do it this way? She finally asked. Why not just tell me directly that there was a loan, and let me handle it myself? I thought carefully about how to answer this, because I think the honest answer required a kind of vulnerability neither of us had really practiced with each other before. I think, I said slowly, he was scared that if it came from him or from me you'd hear it as criticism, as him not trusting you or me trying to make myself look more responsible than you. He wanted you to just have the house clean, without the complicated feelings getting in the way of you actually keeping it. Do you think that's true? She asked. That I would have made it about something else? I want to tell you that I gave her a generous answer, the kind that smooths over difficult truths for the sake of preserving a relationship. I didn't entirely. I think, I said, we've spent our whole lives in a family where difficult information gets received as an attack rather than just information. I don't think that's only your pattern. I think it's something both of us learned in different ways, growing up in the same house. She was quiet again, and when she spoke next, her voice carried something I hadn't heard from her in a long time, something genuinely reflective rather than defensive. I think you're right, she said. I think I've spent a long time assuming anything hard you told me was really about you trying to be better than me. I don't know when I started doing that, but I think Dad knew it even if I didn't. The loan was paid off within 6 weeks, once the insurance proceeds processed. The house is now exactly what Vanessa believed she had inherited that afternoon in the conference room, free and clear, carrying no debt beyond what she can manage on her own. Our relationship since then has been different, not transformed dramatically into something it never was before, but genuinely, incrementally more honest than it had been for most of our adult lives. Vanessa calls now, sometimes just to talk, without the specific defensive posture that used to characterize most of our conversations about anything remotely difficult. She kept the hardware store running, learning slowly and with real effort, the specific business details our father had managed quietly for 34 years. She calls me sometimes with questions, the kind of questions that would have once felt, to her, like admitting weakness in front of someone she'd always needed to appear stronger than. I don't think our father's plan was perfect. I think, if I'm honest, a more direct conversation between the two of us years earlier might have spared everyone considerable pain. But I also understand with more compassion now than I felt in that conference room, exactly why he chose the careful, formal structure he built instead. He understood his daughters, both of us, more completely than either of us had probably given him credit for. He knew Vanessa needed to receive difficult truths without the complication of family resentment attached to them. He knew I could be trusted to carry difficult information quietly, for years if necessary, without ever using it against the sister he loved just as much as he loved me, even if he expressed that love in a different register. If you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the one trusted with the hard things precisely because you wouldn't use them as weapons, I think you understand something about what this story is actually about. My father didn't give me an envelope because he loved me more. He gave it to me because he trusted me to handle something delicate the way he would have handled it himself, carefully, without ever needing credit for the carrying. My name is Claire Ashford. The house is free and clear. My sister and I are still learning what an honest relationship between us actually looks like, slowly, the way most genuine repair happens. Drop a comment if you've ever been trusted with something difficult precisely because of who you are, not despite it. Tell me what that trust has cost you, and what it's given you in return. Subscribe if you're new here. New story every single day. I'll see you in the next one.